Welcome back to the Morning Kickoff Show. I'm your host, Matt Witt, and we are back to preview a Minnesota Vikings football matchup. This week, Week 12, Thursday Night Football on Thanksgiving, the Minnesota Vikings will host the 6-4 New England Patriots. Thursday, 7:20 Central Time on NBC. Minnesota Vikings will be wearing their Color Rush uniforms, their primetime purple uniforms in this matchup, the beautiful purple and gold uniforms that the Minnesota Vikings tend to always lose in, just simply because the Vikings do not have a good record on primetime. Now, this Thursday, Thanksgiving, which is going to be a great Thanksgiving for us football fans because 5 of the 6 teams that will be playing on Thanksgiving are currently in the playoff picture, with, of course, the one team that's not being the Detroit Lions, as it happens just about every year. This is one of the best playoff, or one of the best Thursday night football, or one of the best Thanksgiving schedules is what I mean to say here on Thanksgiving. And us Vikings fans, us NFL fans are excited for this day. Just please, Vikings, do not ruin my Thanksgiving. It should be a great Thanksgiving. I love food. I love football. I love hanging out with people. So this should be a great Thanksgiving for Vikings fans, as they will host a very tough New England Patriots squad, where the Vikings are playing a Patriots squad that we haven't beat this New England Patriots team since the year 2000. Since Tom Brady was a backup quarterback, the Minnesota Vikings haven't been able to beat the Patriots. As a matter of fact, the Vikings haven't beat Tom Brady in his long NFL career at all, even when he was with the Buccaneers. Now, we only played him once when he was with the Buccaneers. Just please, Tom Brady, retire after the Vikings can beat you, because I can't live with the fact that you had this long of a career and we weren't able to beat Tom Brady once. Maybe we'll face him in the playoffs. They are expected to win their division right now. And the Vikings, like I mentioned, don't have a great record on primetime. And as a matter of fact, Kirk Cousins alone is 10-18 on primetime, with, yes, known for his worst day being Monday Night Football. However, his stats on Thursday Night Football are worse. And this is why, going into this game, I'm hoping this can change the narrative here, that the Vikings can win in the big moments against a playoff team on primetime when the lights are bright. Thanksgiving, everybody's watching it on their couch together as a family, watching the Minnesota Vikings and New England Patriots. I'm hoping this can change, because it doesn't go so great. I mean, Kirk Cousins is known for not being great on primetime, and the Vikings as a whole don't tend to win on primetime. Looking at the Minnesota injury report this week, unfortunately, the Minnesota Vikings have 5 injuries to some core players. Christian Darrisaw, the stud breakout left tackle for the Vikings, has already been ruled out in this game. This means, once again, we're going to have to see Blake Brandel come out there, and Blake Brandel against that defense is just not going to be a fun sight to see. Spoiler alert, he's going to get taken advantage of the entire game. They're going to target him. They're going to go for him. They're going to maybe throw Matt Judon on the weak side. We'll have to wait and see, but still not a good sight to see for the Minnesota Vikings to have Christian Darrisaw out. And then the best player on this defense, Zadarius Smith, is back on the injury report. Questionable play in this game with a knee injury. This will likely be a game day decision, like we see Zadarius Smith every week being a game day decision, and we hope he can be back to play. Great news for the Minnesota Vikings is that Dalvin Tomlinson has returned to practice. He was limited this week with his calf injury. A huge loss in the Minnesota Vikings defensive front has been Dalvin Tomlinson, and it would be great to see him play in this game, especially going up against one of the best running back duos in the league, who both are averaging 4.5 yards per carry. Rahamondre Stevenson and Dameon Pierce are no joke. That offensive line is serious, and it would be great to see Dalvin Tomlinson play in this game. Going on to the Patriots injury report, they have 4 starters that entered the injury report. Starting it off with David Andrews, their 7th-year starting center, is questionable to play in this game with a thigh injury. Actually, he's doubtful to play in this game with a thigh injury, so he'll likely not play. And then Isaiah Wynn, their starting left guard. Now, he used to be their starting left tackle, so I was surprised to see that he's playing guard for them now. Questionable play in this game with a foot injury. If Isaiah Wynn doesn't play in this game, we'll see the rookie Cole Strange, who they drafted in the first round out of Chattanooga, come to start on their offensive line at left guard. Devontae Parker, questionable play in this game with a knee injury, limited this week, as well as Onferny Jennings, their edge rusher, questionable to play with a back injury. Didn't know who this other edge rusher is. He's the guy who's playing alongside Matt Judon for them. One of the best pass rushing teams in this entire league right now is the Patriots. Looking at it for the Minnesota Vikings, last week the Vikings struggled at protecting Kirk Cousins. Last week the Vikings struggled at stopping the run game. Well, I have bad news for Vikings fans, because last week we played arguably the best pass rusher in the league, Micah Parsons. This week, we play maybe an even better pass rusher in Matthew Judon. You can make whatever argument you want, but in my opinion, these are the two best pass rushers in this league right now. Meaning Kirk Cousins is not going to have time inside the pocket at all. And once again, the Minnesota Vikings have to come in with a different game plan than they did last week. Because the Patriots watched the game from last week and are going to try to do the same thing, where they run the ball down our throat and get into Kirk Cousins' face all game long. And that is a recipe disaster for the Minnesota Vikings. As we've seen, dropping back Kirk Cousins 15 times a game does not work. You have to roll out Kirk Cousins. You have to run more play-action bootleg passes. You got to do something about this. The fact that Kirk Cousins is not a quarterback who can extend a play like many quarterbacks can. And the fact that Kirk Cousins doesn't have the mobility as a lot of quarterbacks. I mean, we saw this last week when Micah Parsons was in his face, when the Viking Dexter Lawrence was in his face. It was not a great, or DeMarcus Lawrence was in his face. It was not a great week for the Minnesota Vikings at all. That's understating. It was a terrible week for the Minnesota Vikings. And now going up against this opponent, you are playing a very similar opponent to the Dallas Cowboys this week, where the Vikings have to completely flip a switch in this game. Now, you only had a few days to prepare. It's a short week. Minnesota Vikings are going from playing on Sunday, going to play on Thursday in this week, and a very short week for the Minnesota Vikings. However, with that being said, it is short enough for you to just understand that everything has to change in this matchup. And we're going to start it off with our number one thing, and that is the key to success on this Minnesota Vikings offense. And I mentioned this last week, and I'll mention it again. Additional blockers. It is so clear right now that the Minnesota Vikings have to add more blockers on this Minnesota Vikings offense. I mean, not add more blockers, have to involve more blockers on this Minnesota Vikings offense. Right now, CJ Ham, Johnny Munt, these are guys that can be added to our pass protection on the Minnesota Vikings offense, or run blocking on our Minnesota Vikings offense. As against this New England Patriots defense, you have to give your quarterback enough time to get the ball to Justin Jefferson's hands. You got to be able to move the ball through the air and on the ground in this game. And what is a recipe for success for the Minnesota Vikings offense is players like CJ Ham, fullback, our favorite player, our guy, hammer time for the Minnesota Vikings. And if you don't want to use CJ Ham, I'm fine with that. If you don't want to run I formation, 2 tight end sets, that's fine. Just find guys where you're not having the same results, 3 and outs, where you're getting sacked all game long. Last week, Minnesota Vikings offense as a whole had a terrible day. Awful day. One of the worst offensive line games I've seen by the Minnesota Vikings this season and in a long time. As we have multiple players who've been not living up to our expectations. And now with your best player in your offense, in my opinion, your best player in your offensive line, Christian Darrisaw not playing in this game, you have Blake Brandel stepping out there. You got to give this guy help. And this is why into this game, I would like to see 2 tight end sets. I'd like to see I formation. I'd like to see something new. I don't care. Throw 2 running backs out there. Have them be blockers. Something that you can do for the Minnesota Vikings. Our entire offensive line has been struggling in pass protection, and now you're going up against one of the best pass rushing teams in the league right now, with, in my opinion, the defensive player of the year, Matthew Judon, who has 13 sacks in just 10 games. NFL sack leader right now, first team All-Pro likely this season. You gotta have a plan for him. And because here's the thing with the Minnesota Vikings, they've been running a lot of 11 personnel, which is great to see. Kirk Cousins has more targets to go to. Kirk Cousins has more reads to go through. But he can't get the ball to his receivers if he doesn't have time in the pocket. He's not Kyler Murray who can extend a play as long as he wants. This is a quarterback who needs a clear pocket in order for the Vikings to succeed. This is not an opinion. This is a fact. Kirk has a great arm. Kirk is a very accurate quarterback, but he needs a lot of help in order for him to succeed. He's a situational quarterback, and we got to put him in the right situation to succeed. Now onto the defensive side of the ball, because one thing that the Vikings have been terrible at is defense as a whole. The Vikings are now 31st in yards allowed per game. 31st. I don't know what team we're ahead of, but that should not be possible. When you have as much future Hall of Famers and veterans on your Vikings defense as you have, you should not be giving up this many yards. And our key to defensive success in this game is just Eric Kendricks and Jordan Hicks stopping that run. Looking at it for the Patriots, I am not worried with their receivers. I'm not worried with Mac Jones, and I'm not worried with Bailey Zappi. I feel like the Vikings can get to that quarterback and be able to stop the Vikings or stop the Patriots offense in this game. We have one of the best pass rushing teams in this league, one of the best pass rushing duos, with that being Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter. You can throw DJ Waterman into the mix, and into this game we'll have Dalvin Tomlinson, might be back. We're great at getting to the passer. But in this game, we have to be able to stop this run, because right now with the Patriots, they have one of the best running teams in this league. We just played maybe the best running team last week, and now we're playing another great running team, with that being the Patriots, who have Rahamondre Stevenson and Damian Harris, who are combined averaging 4.5 yards per carry. We can't have the same game we had last week, and this should scare us Vikings fans. Because the performance I saw last week, where the Vikings were not able to do a single thing against Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott, is going to be a problem. You have Eric Kendricks and Jordan Hicks, who must get their open field tackles. Because like we saw last week, what did the Cowboys do? They got the running backs one-on-one against our linebackers. You get those running backs one-on-one against our linebackers, it's not good. What are the Patriots going to do in this game? They're going to try to do the exact same thing. Get the running backs one-on-one against our pass rushers. Their offensive line is great, as the Patriots' offensive line is always great. They might not have Joe Thuney anymore, but they still have one of the best offensive lines in the league. Whoops, there's the playoff picture. But they still have one of the best offensive lines in the league and are going to be able to do this against us all game long. What do the Vikings have to do? Eric Kendricks and Jordan Hicks, I'm looking at these guys to be there to stop the run game and stop those screen passes and be all over the field. Because like I say many times, and I've said it on the show, I don't have a lot of faith in our secondary. I don't. Patrick Peterson's been playing at an all-pro level. Harrison Smith is still, in my opinion, a top 7 safety. Outside of this, we have a lot of inexperienced guys. Caleb Evans might have been great this season. He's still a rookie. I don't expect him to be great against wide receivers like Devontae Parker in this game. And I don't expect the same from Andrew Booth Jr., who's also a rookie, or Chandon Sullivan, who's mostly just a nickelback who is not nearly as fast as a lot of these guys. I don't have faith in our secondary that a lot of Vikings fans do. But what should the Vikings be able to do? Stopping the run. We are investing so much money into this defensive front right now. Every year, the Vikings continue to add players who should be able to stop the run, that being Dalvin Tomlinson, Harrison Phillips. We just added Ross Blacklock. We added Jordan Hicks, and we have Eric Kendricks. We need to be able to stop this run and get to the passer. And this is what the Vikings defense has to continue to improve going forward, because there's no excuse why the Vikings should be 31st in yards allowed per game. This is horrible. We made Skylar Thompson look like Joe Montana. I mean, it's ridiculous, the fact that the Vikings have been this bad of a defense this season. And it sucks, because the Vikings have been great at turning the ball over and rushing the passer, but at the end of the day, that doesn't matter when you can't stop a run game like the Dallas Cowboys or Patriots will have in this game. And these are some of the best run games in the league, and these are teams that we're going to have to face in the playoffs. The Vikings did terrible against the Eagles and Cowboys. These are both teams that you're likely going to have to face in the playoffs if you end up, well, you're going to end up being in the playoffs regardless, because we already have full control of our division. Looking at for the Minnesota Vikings, bold prediction of the week in this matchup: Justin Jefferson, first hat trick. I talked about this last week. I talked about how Justin Jefferson is going to have his revenge game against Trayvon Diggs. Yeah, that didn't happen whatsoever. Justin Jefferson had like 45 yards. Still, I mean, you can give how much credit to Trayvon Diggs as you want in that game. Let's be honest. Kirk Cousins didn't even have the time to put the ball up to get it to Justin Jefferson, because it doesn't matter. If Trayvon Diggs has the best day against Justin Jefferson and he's fully covered the entire game, Jefferson is still gonna come down with the ball. He has been fully covered in some of the catches that he's made. Just an incredible receiver, and first hat trick in this game. Not known for getting touchdowns, but we'll target him more in the red zone. I believe with the Vikings right now, adding more additional blockers, you're gonna have to put more reliance on players like Justin Jefferson. So I'm excited to see what he can do against Jonathan Jones and Jalen Mills, who are not the best corners, but you have to give them some respect. I mean, Bill Belichick makes every cornerback look good. Everybody who's a defensive player should want to play for Bill Belichick, because he seems to elevate their talent. Looking at it, final prediction for this game, I have the Vikings winning, of course, 34-30 in this matchup. I predict the Vikings to win most weeks. I mean, it might be a little biased here. I really do believe the Vikings should win in this matchup. I had some some skeptics with last week, and I had the Vikings winning over the Dallas Cowboys by 1 point. I had the Vikings losing to the Buffalo Bills. Tough stretch right here for the Vikings, and this is a lot of playoff teams that we're going to have to face in this few stretch that we've had. So huge for the Minnesota Vikings. Please, please, please do something. I can't have the same performance we did on national TV last week like we're going to have on national TV this week. Please, Minnesota Vikings, do something in this matchup. Be able to have a game plan against the run, because they're going to have the same playbook that they've had all season long against us. Same playbook, same kind of scheme that the Dallas Cowboys ran against us. They're going to try to run the ball all over us. They're going to try to get into Kirk Cousins' face all game long. Let's just find a way to stop that.